Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's been over 25 seasons since Little People Big World first introduced us to the Roloffs. Today, we're diving into where are all four Roloff kids now in 2025. That's right, Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob. This is the ultimate Roloff family update. Let's get into it. Let's start with Zach Roloff, who ironically is the oldest Roloff sibling. Zach Roloff was born May 10th, 1990, just minutes before his fraternal twin, Jeremy. As the only Roloff sibling with dwarfism, like his mom, Amy, Zach's early years were filmed as part of Little People Big World from age around 15. Millions of people watched him go through surgeries, go on his first dates, play high school soccer, and navigate life as a dwarf on a very public stage, but living a very idyllic childhood in a sense on the farm. He's always been kind of calm, thoughtful, soft-spoken, but really loyal, especially to his mom, Amy. He's always kind of sided with her throughout the years. In 2015, Zach married Tori, a kindergarten teacher from Washington. This was clearly a main storyline for the show. They met when Tori worked at the family's pumpkin patch, and Zach talked about how usually when girls came to hang out at the farm, it was for his brother Jeremy, and it took him a while to actually realize that Tori was there for him, and they had a whirlwind romance that was well documented on the show. Together, they've welcomed 3 kids: Jackson, born May 12th, 2017, Lila, born November 2019, and Josiah, born April 30th, 2022. All 3 kids were born with achondroplasia, just like Zach. And Zach's doctor apparently, according to Zach, said that maybe he has a gene where all his kids will be dwarves, because it's actually pretty rare in the community that all your kids would be dwarves in the same situation. Zach and Tori have been very open about raising children with dwarfism, addressing challenges like, for example, small things like headaches or things like that, or like your foot hurting, makes them worry a lot about the kids because it could be something more serious. So they do worry about medical things quite a bit. Zach stayed on Little People Big World longer than any of his siblings. His storylines often focused on family, parenting, and a lot of conflict with his dad, Matt, especially after a failed negotiation to buy part of Roloff Farms. The tension was, a big reason Zach and Tori decided to step away from the show in 2024 because they had to kind of constantly talk about it. I suspect that a big issue for the conflict has to do with Matt's new fiancée, Karen, because I think when Josiah was born, something like Zach didn't want her to meet him or something, or delayed it, or had no interest in that. So something's going on there for sure. And Karen, I have to bring this up. There have been rumors for a long time that maybe things were happening between Karen and Matt while he was married to Amy. Just saying. I mean, there are even episodes that I've watched where things are sus. Anyways, these days, Zach and Tori run their own podcast called Raising Heights, where they talk about life as a Little People family, parenting. They're funny. They always have like a peak and pit of their week, and balancing what's going on with dealing with public attention and trolls and stuff like that. Recently, they did a spicy questions podcast and answered questions like, if they still go to Roloff Farms. And their answer was that the last time they were there was for Mateo, who is Jacob's son, for his birthday. And it's not a place that they seek out necessarily because the dynamics haven't really changed. So There's relatively no good relationship between Matt and Zach still at this point, but Matt still does come to their kids' baseball games, and I think he mentioned something about Christmas and a few things like that. Zach did mention that the relationships between siblings are better. Specifically, he's really good with Molly and Jacob. He didn't talk too much about Jeremy, but alluded to the fact that the kids or the cousins love hanging out and that helps things. So I think that was his way of saying things may have been tense but are kind of cooling off now. And that's too bad because Zach and Jeremy, they're, in my opinion, the heart of the family in a way. They were really the stars of the show, but they're just super different. So it's kind of unavoidable that they would have conflicts. Just overall, I hope they can maintain a healthy and good twin relationship. And speaking of Jeremy Roloff, let's talk about him. So he's also born May 10th, 1990, and he grew up on camera alongside his siblings. Unlike Zach, Jeremy does not have dwarfism, but he still faced intense public attention from a young age. In 2016, after nearly a decade on Little People, Big World, Jeremy and his wife Audrey stepped away from reality TV, citing a desire for privacy and independence. Jeremy was the first of his siblings to get married, and he had actually moved to Santa Barbara for college and even lived in LA for a bit before moving back to Oregon. Jeremy married Audrey Mirabella Botti on September 20th, 2014, and they now have 4 children. Ember Jean, born September 10th, 2017, Bodie James, born January 8th, 2020, Radley Knight, born November 8th, 2021, and Mirabella, who was born a year ago. Since leaving TLC, Jeremy and Audrey have actually authored multiple books and talk a lot about marriage. Their books are A Love Letter Life, Creative Love, and The Marriage Journal. They also run a Beating 50% brand, basically focused on avoiding divorce, I guess, and encouraging covenant marriages. And they have a podcast called These Are the Days, where they tend to talk about more serious topics than Zach and Tori. And this is just an example of how different the brothers are. The podcasts are completely different. In 2022, they purchased a 4,000 plus square foot fixer-upper farmhouse on 4 acres in Oregon, very close to Roloff Farms and Audrey's parents' house. And so they recently took their kids to Disneyland. They're also strong supporters of kids spending time outside. They try to spend 1,000 hours outside playing per summer. They also do part-time homeschool for their kids, I guess, and have been criticized for their beliefs about raw milk and love for essential oils, among other things. Jeremy also likes to go on philosophical rants. He loves creative projects or building projects. He also knows all about Bitcoin, and fun fact, he defines the whole ordeal of him not getting the farm, Roloff farm, as the death of a dream. That's right, he was the first brother to try to make a deal to buy the farm with his dad, and it didn't happen, which was surprising to everyone because he was basically almost promised the farm from a young age, documented on the show and everything, but somehow it didn't work out. Jacob George Roloff was born January 17th, 1997. He is the youngest of Matt and Amy's 4 kids, and he grew up under the lens of TLC cameras. Actually, he appeared on Little People, Big World as young as 9. But even as a kid, Jacob stood out. He was kind of really quiet, a deep thinker, introverted, and, he was also accident prone and probably the most likely to get hurt on the show. There was an episode where he got a tick and they were worried about getting it out. There was one where he actually had a major accident with a trebuchet. Anyways, at age 18, Jacob made the bold decision to leave the show entirely, rejecting reality TV, and basically he thought that reality TV created a false narrative on who he really was. It was a really weird episode when he leaves, not gonna lie. He just kind of drove off and it was anticlimactic and he never reappeared. It's so weird. In 2020, Jacob revealed that he had been sexually abused by a producer during his time on the show, which was an incredibly brave and heartbreaking admission. His family stood by him and he was focused on healing and just protecting others from the same experience. Jacob married Isabel Rock, a writer and artist, in September 2019. They met through mutual friends. They welcomed their first child, Mateo Tomas Roloff, on December 6, 2021, but unlike his siblings, Jacob made a decision that Mateo would not be shown online in pictures to protect his privacy and his childhood away from the internet and cameras. Jacob and Isabel now live full-time on Roloff farms, but not in the big house. They actually live in the converted RV parked on the property. The DW, I believe. Jacob works closely with his dad Matt. He seems to be the closest with Matt, helping manage the farm's day-to-day, especially during pumpkin season. He's very involved in gardening, orchard, planting, chicken care, composting, and just building a more regenerative farm for the future. You won't see him on TV, but apparently you can see him during pumpkin season, like hauling hay or fixing stuff. Jacob's become, kind of a quiet philosopher. I feel like he's kind of like Jeremy in that way. His social media is filled with quotes from like Noam Chomsky, Wendell Berry, like mystic writers, and he tends to talk about environmental justice, anti-capitalism, and Palestine. So let's now go to Molly Jo. Molly Jo Roloff was born on September 17, 1993, making her the third child and the only daughter in the Roloff family. She grew up on Little People, Big World, appearing in the early seasons with her brothers, Zach, Jeremy, and Jacob. From the start, Molly stood out, smart, grounded. She wasn't really interested in being in the spotlight. She's very smart. Fans often described her as the family's voice of reason, and she was always very calm and thoughtful, and, among a household of big personalities. After high school, Molly moved to Spokane, Washington to attend Whitworth University, where she graduated with a double major in accounting and Spanish. Unlike her siblings, Molly didn't stay in the entertainment world at all. Instead, she pursued her career in finance. She's worked at major firms like Moss Adams, and as of recent years, she's been employed as senior accountant at Nordstrom. So that's exciting. It's a path that reflects her personality, very professional, structured, low drama. In August 2017, Molly married her longtime boyfriend, Joel Silvius, in a ceremony on the Roloff family farm in Oregon, but it was not televised, and only a few photos were shared, which matches Molly's low-key style. The couple now lives in Spokane, where they lead a quiet life away from the cameras. They don't post much on social media and haven't announced any kids, but who knows. She does visit Roloff Farm from time to time, especially for family events and pumpkin season, and I think she's close with everybody. Meanwhile, on the farm in 2025, so now I guess, Jacob is the right-hand man, Matt's engaged to Karen Chandler, and they're living kind of part-time in Arizona, part-time in Oregon. Who knows what will happen with the farm? But that is your Roloff family update for 2025 for the kids, from podcasts to pumpkin patches, farm life to families. The siblings have really grown up and gone their own way, and it's kind of interesting to see it all unfold. Which Roloff siblings' journey surprised you the most? Are you surprised that Jacob is basically running the farm? Drop it in the comments, hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more deep dives. Until next time, and like Zach and Tori say, in their podcast. Try your best and forget the rest. Bye, guys.